We are honored to have Senator and Mrs. Gardiner join us today as keynote speakers. They were tireless advocates to ensuring the 2016 passage of the Florida Postsecondary Comprehensive Transition Program Act, FPCTP. Andy Gardiner joined Orlando Health in 2008, June 2008, as Senior Vice President of External Affairs and Community Relations. He oversees the strategy for community benefit, community relations, media relations, sports, partnerships, government relations, diversity, and language resources for the organization. Previously, he was the president of the Apopka Chamber of Commerce, a position he held for 10 years. As a former member of the Florida Senate, he served from 2008 through 2016 as a member of the Florida Senate and was president of the Senate from 2014 through 2016. During his tenure in the Senate, Andy was instrumental in passing legislation aimed at providing a path to economic independence for people with unique abilities. The Gardiner Scholarship Program was created to provide and expand opportunities for customized educational programs for students. Andy holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Stetson University in DeLand, Florida. In 2018, he received an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters degree from Beacon College in Leesburg, Florida, for his advocacy of inclusion, equality, and equal access for Floridians with unique abilities. In 2019, he was named Outstanding Diversity Champion by the Orlando Business Journal, Diversity in Business. Camille Gardiner is a proud homeschooling mother of 3 children and an active community volunteer. In 2010, Camille co-founded the Down Syndrome Foundation of Florida and continues to be very involved in the organization and serves on their board. The foundation is a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing individuals with Down syndrome and their families opportunities to be successful and live their best lives. Camille serves on several other boards in the community that support children and individuals with unique abilities, including the Howard Phillips Center for Children and Families and Florida Able. Florida Able. In 2018, Camille received an honorary doctorate degree from Beacon College in recognition of her work to improve the lives of individuals with unique abilities. Camille's received her Bachelor's of Business Administration from Stetson University and is a certified public accountant. If they are ready, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome Camille and Senator Gardiner. I'll stop sharing.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can everybody hopefully hear us and see us?
Yes.
Janice, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for really allowing us to spend a little bit of time and kicking off this just incredible opportunity to talk about the program. And I think what you'll hear from Camille and I this morning is really more about our journey and how we got to where we are as not just a former legislator, but as parents. And before I turn it over to Camille, and then I'll add some more words, and then hopefully, Janice, if time is available, we're happy to answer any questions as well about our journey. But as I was sitting here listening to all of the different things that are coming up, one thing that I wanted to go ahead and just really briefly talk about before I turn it over to Camille. For those of you that are listening, and maybe this is your first time and thinking about a program or whatever it may be, you heard the term quite often, unique abilities. And there's a reason that the center is called, the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities. And that came out of really our journey. And that came out of a belief, and I think you'll hear it this morning as we tell our story, is we never looked at our son who was born with Down syndrome as having a disability. Our view, and really all during our lives since Andrew was born and our time in the legislature, our view was that our son and all individuals, they don't have a disability, they have a unique ability. And it's our job as parents, but also our jobs as leaders like yourselves and starting programs to find that unique ability in each student and help them to achieve every goal that they have and every goal that their family has. So we thank you. We were blessed to be in a position to where we could have maybe influenced some things on the state level and around in the cities and counties. But y'all are the ones that really implement the vision and the dream that we had when we started very early on. So we appreciate the opportunity to visit this morning and to talk about our journey. And we appreciate everything that you do. And with that, I'll turn it over to really the architect of all this, my wife, Camille.
Good morning. And thank you so much for being here today and for being involved in a Florida post-secondary comprehensive transition program. The post-secondary opportunities that you are providing to individuals with unique abilities is life-changing. As you know, this is an area that Andy and I are extremely passionate about. We are grateful to have this opportunity today to talk with you about where that passion originated and how we've used our personal experience and influence to open up opportunities for people with unique abilities across the great state of Florida. I thought we'd start back at the beginning. Andy and I were married in 1997, and at the time, Andy was working at the Apopka Chamber of Commerce. In September of 1999, Andy decided to pursue one of his dreams, serving in the Florida legislature. Over the next year, we spent every possible opportunity knocking on doors in the district. We would go out with a group of volunteers every Saturday and Sunday, and Andy would go out on his own during the week. It was a lot of work, but it paid off in November of 2000 when Andy was elected to the Florida House of Representatives. Andy went on to serve 8 years in the Florida House and then 8 years in the Florida Senate, where he was selected among his fellow senators to serve as Senate President from 2014 to 2016. During that time in the legislature, we had 3 children. Andrew was born in 2003, Joanna in 2007, and Catherine in 2010. It was a busy time. Our journey into advocacy for people with unique abilities began September 21st, 2003, when our son Andrew was born. In the delivery room, we found out that Andrew had Down syndrome and that he would have to have open heart surgery to repair a hole in his heart. It was in the car on the way home from the hospital that Andy and I made the commitment that we were going to treat Andrew just like we would treat any other child. We decided that we would have high expectations from him and that we would not accept the limitations that others were going to put on him. I'd like to take a few minutes to share with all of you a little bit about Down syndrome. I can't miss out on the opportunity of having such a group and not sharing a little bit. So statistics show that about 1 in every 691 babies in the United States is born with Down syndrome. And it's estimated that there are about 400,000 people with Down syndrome living in the United States today. Down syndrome knows no racial, age, or economic boundaries. The first clinical description of Down syndrome in history was written and published by Dr. John Langdon Down in 1862. Many people think that we use the term Down syndrome because it's bad, it's a bad thing to have, it's terrible for families and the individual, but it actually just gets its name from the doctor. And as parents, we often joke that we wish his name was Dr. John Langdon Awesome, and then our kids would have Awesome syndrome. It would be one less hurdle to get over for our kiddos. In 1959, doctors realized that Down syndrome resulted from an extra chromosome. Much has changed, fortunately, over the past 40 years for people with Down syndrome. Before the 1980s, the overwhelming majority of people with Down syndrome in the United States were placed in institutions, oftentimes as infants or young children. Pictures of these institutions show us cruel and unusual punishment for innocent people whose only crime is to have been born differently abled. Because of neglect, abuse, and lack of access to education and medical care, people with Down syndrome would die an early death in these institutions. During what I consider the dark ages for people with Down syndrome in this country, most professionals considered it impossible for people with Down syndrome to learn how to speak properly, let alone read and write. It was assumed that people with Down syndrome would not walk properly, let alone participate in sports. They most likely could not dress, feed, or take care of themselves, and were determined to be a burden to a marriage, siblings, and a family. They were not allowed to attend public schools, and most Americans believed they should not be allowed in public spaces such as movie theaters, malls, or parks. It's important to remember that up until 1984, doctors in the United States did not provide life-saving procedures to people with Down syndrome, such as surgeries related to the heart. Our son, Andrew, had open heart surgery at 4 months old. If he had been born in the 1980s, he most likely would not have been able to have that surgery. In 1981, the first preventative medical checklist was recommended for doctors treating individuals with Down syndrome. And not surprisingly, we saw the life expectancy for people with Down syndrome increase dramatically. In 1929, the life expectancy for a person with Down syndrome was only 9 years old. In 1946, that increased to 12 years old. And in the 70s and 80s, when those medical guidelines came out, it increased to 25 years old. And today, the life expectancy is 60 years old. So we are making progress. In 1979, research was published that described the impact of stimulation on infants and children with Down syndrome and compared the IQs of children raised in institutions versus those raised at home. Children raised at home, even with no specific attention or stimulation, had an average IQ that was 15 points higher than those raised in an institution. Those raised at home with stimulation averaged 30 points higher. And this is when we began to see a shift away from institutions. Amazingly, 40 years later, and here we are sitting today at a conference for universities, colleges, and career tech centers discussing opportunities for people with unique abilities to attend college. When our son Andrew was born, Andy and I didn't know much about Down syndrome. We were fortunate that we were able to meet other parents who told us about tools and resources that could help Andrew to develop physically and cognitively. We worked really hard with him in those early years. Through Andrew, we learned that most of the stereotypes about Down syndrome are not true. I can clearly remember a time when Andrew was a toddler and he and I were working on some flashcards. He couldn't yet say the words perfectly, but when I held up the flashcard that said mouth, he would point to his mouth. And I remember saying, "You're so smart." And instantly having a thought in my head that said, "He can't be smart, he has Down syndrome." I quickly corrected myself, thinking, regardless if he has Down syndrome or not, he is smart. It was through these countless experiences and the experiences with other parents and advocates that helped to shape Andy's career in the legislature. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Andy and let him share a little bit about his experiences in the legislature.
So as Camille mentioned, our journey started when Andrew was born, and I was, I think, 2 years into the Florida House, and Andrew was our first child. We did, times have changed a little bit. We didn't even know if we were having a boy or a girl. We were much more traditional about knowing. And as you can imagine, as a young parent, to be told in the delivery room that your son most likely has Down syndrome, and started that journey for us that we knew nothing about. We had no clue. It was not anticipated. Certainly there was that initial shock, and then meeting with the doctors and saying that most likely, very soon he'll have to have the open heart surgery to repair a hole in his heart. It, for us, it was overwhelming. And I think what it did is it really started this journey where every step of the way we were able to potentially impact different things that can maybe help families that face similar situations, whether it's Down syndrome or the autism spectrum or whatever it may be. And that's the piece that I think really changed for us, because as you can imagine, after the first 24 hours, you're immediately online trying to find out as much information as you can about Down syndrome. And what we found is, and Camille probably can attest to it with new families now that she counsels, is don't go on the internet, because the information that was being provided really was not necessarily the best information to give to a family that is facing a situation. And I think that's across the spectrum. I think, you know, a family that faces the situation of a child that is autistic probably has that same scenario where you immediately react to what you're reading online. And so for us, we were sort of thrown into a situation and in a journey that we weren't necessarily ready for. But it did allow us, because of the opportunity that we were blessed with to be in the legislative process, to really follow this journey to where we are today and to where the good work that y'all are doing. Because this journey and things that we were involved in really tracked with Andrew's different stages in life. And I want to go through several of those this morning, and then I'll turn it back over to Camille to add to it. But there are a couple of things that we were involved in that, you know, I didn't just wake up one day and say, wow, it'd be really neat if we changed the IEP or whatever it was. But each stage of our life with Andrew really put us in a situation where we could go to fellow leaders in the legislative process or the Department of Education or whatever it may be, and say, these are the type of things that we need to be thinking about. And I'll go back to those first couple of years. It was near the tail end of Governor Bush's governorship, and even before Governor Bush, Lawton Chiles was a real advocate for individuals with unique abilities. And one of the things that Governor Bush talked a lot about, and we were living it, was the importance of early intervention services, specifically speech therapy and occupational therapy and different things like that. But back in 2003 and 2004 and different things like that, we were in the middle of that. We were seeing the complications of finding services and having additional services, which we ultimately were able to get through just our own, you know, ability to pay for them. But you had all these different examples, and I vividly remember talking with Governor Bush, who often would meet with legislators, and I said at the time, back in probably 2003 or 2004, we will eventually see these kids with unique abilities, with all these early intervention services, eventually, because they're going to work, be in a situation where they get to the age where they are interested in doing more than just sitting at home, where they're going to want jobs, they're going to want post-secondary education. And y'all's passion and what you guys are doing now all came from those early years in the state of Florida, where we really started to say, how can we make a difference? How can we make change? But you know, sometimes you like to be right, but it's also the ability to say, it worked, but now we have to take it to the next level. And so we started this journey going forward, and then from there were other things that just came up that we just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I give a lot of credit to Camille through her foundation and through the families that she works with, because it was not uncommon for me to come home from Tallahassee or whatever it was, and Camille pointing out, well, did you know this happened? Or do you know this is the process and this is how it works, or whatever it may be. And as I say, you know, a lot of what I did was not necessarily my ideas, they were her ideas, and I just didn't want to sleep on the couch. So I knew I had to do them. But we were very blessed to be in a place where we learned a lot as parents, but we learned a lot from other families and other individuals that were involved in this process. And there's a couple of examples that I want to give, because we were so blessed to be in the right place at the right time. Not that other legislators hadn't tried to make changes, but when you're blessed to be on that journey of maybe becoming Senate president, people return your calls a little bit more, certainly more than they do now. But it really forces the legislature to believe in what you're doing and believing in what you're involved in. And I want to give you a couple of examples of just some things that Camille brought to my attention that allowed us to make some changes. I know everybody on this call probably is familiar with the IEP, the Individual Education Plan. Very early on, I think I had moved over to the Senate, and there were a couple of us that were real advocates. John Thrasher, who's now president of FSU, John and I served together. John has a grandson who was born with Down syndrome, is almost the same age as Andrew, actually is friends with my son. And so I would occasionally come to John Thrasher with, hey, I heard about this particular issue. And the IEP is a good example. Camille has counseled parents that go to an IEP, and the perception of the IEP was that it was the parent with a bunch of administrators making decisions about what's in the best interest of the child with unique abilities. And we would hear from parents that said, I just didn't feel as though the decision was the best interest for my child. I was concerned. I didn't have an advocate. I know Camille has gone with some parents to help them walk through that. And so we decided as a legislature, well, we're going to tweak it a little bit, and we're going to make it very clear that the parent, in statute, it's very clear the parent has to sign off on the IEP, has to agree with it. We're talking about the education of that individual with unique abilities. And it's important that there's a partnership between the administration, the teacher, and the parent. We heard so many situations from parents that, felt as though they didn't have the ability to have an impact on the decision made for their child. But that to us was a very early and a small thing, but it started this process of our ultimate vision of really from cradle to career for an individual with unique abilities and the family. Another example of some different things, I didn't know this until I was in the legislature. The state of Florida had no definition for what inclusion was. We all talk about inclusion, but I can remember testimony before committees where people would come in and say, well, my child with unique abilities is in a separate area and then is brought in for maybe art or band. And, we sat around as legislators and we said, well, what's the definition of inclusion? It's very clear through federal law and others that individuals with unique abilities are supposed to be given the same opportunities as everybody else. And I think ultimately the state of Florida became one of the first states in the country that actually has a definition for inclusion. And Camille probably can recite it because I think she was probably involved in writing it. But that was just an extra little piece for a family or a school system and others to understand what our vision was for inclusion. We wanted the ability for kids with unique abilities to be in the classroom. We also made changes to where if a parent or through the IEP, if somebody wanted to come in and actually help that student in the classroom at the time in a partnership with the school district and that particular school, parents could have that option for their children as well. Another example where, and this one probably was a little bit more of a challenge because it was not embraced by everybody, is and it was probably the year before I was Senate president, maybe 2 years before when we started the discussion, is you start changing the IEP, you start changing inclusion, and as kids get older, they start to realize they're in a regular classroom, they're in a partnership with the school system, and we had to do something about the special diploma. And we would have families come up that would testify about the special diploma that would specifically say, my child got a special diploma and they can't do anything with it. They can't go to the community college. They can't go into a program like this. And for about a year, John Thrasher and myself and several of us really tried to, okay, what could we come up with? And ultimately what we decided to do was, we're just going to repeal the special diploma. We're just going to change it. And we're going to really push everybody into a situation where they have to address that the special diploma really didn't provide any opportunity for a young student to go to that next level. And it was, for some, controversial. And some school districts didn't necessarily agree with that. But it really forced the debate, and it really put us in a situation where now, you have kids that are receiving a diploma or a modified diploma that now have the ability to go to a college, a community college, whether Valencia or Seminole State and some of these others, at least here in our community, which to me has had just a huge, huge impact on making a difference for a family. And then another issue, and I want to tell the story a little bit of how we created the center, is at the time, John Hitt was president of UCF and a very dear friend. And John and I would meet regularly and talk about issues that were important to the University of Central Florida, whether it was trying to create the downtown campus and different things like that. And I can vividly remember meeting with John Hitt and telling President Hitt, I kind of had this idea. And what the idea is that when a parent is told of the diagnosis, we were told the morning Andrew was born. If you have a son or daughter that maybe is born with autism, sometimes it's 3 or 4 years old. And the vision that I had and shared with John Hitt is, wouldn't it be awesome when that parent is notified that your child has a unique ability, that there is a resource available to them, there is a roadmap for them, there is the ability to say that if your child has an IEP, here's how it's going to work. If your child is in a school, here's how inclusion works. If your child stays on this track, they have the opportunity to have a diploma that they can actually do something with. And I was explaining to John Hitt, in a perfect world, we didn't have that when Andrew was born. Excuse me. But now parents have that, and they have that ability. And that's why what y'all are doing is so awesome. It's not just about the student, it's about the mom and dad. It's about the parent that is literally overwhelmed with what they just were told. And we envision the state being a partner. And I was explaining this to John Hitt in my office. And I said, John, if this works, if we're able to make this journey work for all of us, we need a location where the center can be, where schools, vocation, wherever it can come to and learn. And parents can go and say, my child is interested in this, and the center ability to say, well, here's 3 or 4 different options for your child. Here are the locations for them. And I said, John, this is also about, at the right time, students with unique abilities living on campus and some of those other things. And I still remember President Hitt saying to me, we're all in. If you want us to do it, UCF will do it. No question at all. When the University of Central Florida stepped up and said, we're willing to do that. And that partnership, in fact, the first year we tried to pass it, I'm not sure it made it, but I believe the University of Central Florida already kind of started that process. There were some really good programs. Obviously, the University of North Florida had a program where we actually went up and looked at it. And that ability to have a partner like University of Central Florida to say, yes, we're going to make this happen. And for us to see where it is now, it's just such a special opportunity to meet the families that have been positively impacted by these decisions that y'all are making every day. Nobody has to do a program like this. It's not like, a college or university has to do English. This is a passion, and it's something that we've dreamed about and we've talked about. I can remember, Camille probably tells the story better than I do, is soon after the program at University of Central Florida was started, she read me a note where a mom had just dropped her daughter off for school at University of Central Florida, lived on campus. And the mom said, never in my life did I think I would be dropping my daughter off at college and leaving her. And that is a testament to the commitment that all of you make, and really part of this vision that we wanted everybody to have. And for a mom and dad, and maybe Camille can talk a little bit about some of the websites and some of the other things that we've created, but that Bright Expectations website was really created because we wanted there to be a clearinghouse of positive information about the journey that you're on, and also have school districts in the state of Florida has to submit reports. What are your plans? What are you working on? The state of Florida agencies have to submit how many individuals with unique abilities have you hired, all these different things. And we were just very blessed to be in maybe the right place at the right time to have an impact that hopefully will last long beyond us. And it's just been a really incredible journey. And I'll, before I turn it back over to Camille, when you have the opportunity to maybe lead the Senate, or be in a position where you can actually change some legislation, I would often tell my colleagues and staff, as we were thinking about, okay, what do we want to do? I would always say, don't think about Andrew, don't think about me, and don't think about Camille. Think about that single mom or dad that is faced with the challenge and of having a child with unique abilities, and let us as a state be a partner in that. And we're not perfect. The state certainly has its ongoing challenges. We know that, but I'd like to think that with this program and the center and what we're doing for individuals with unique abilities, we've given that family, like we were in 2003, a roadmap and an opportunity to say, we're going to be okay, that our child is going to have options. They're going to have the ability to go to a school, whether it's vocational training or a tech college or a University of Central Florida, a University of North Florida, whatever it may be, that what you're doing is not just for that student, it's for the whole family, and it's for the mom and dad, it's for the single mom or the single dad, whatever it may be. You're giving them hope that this journey, they have a partnership. And so we just, and I'll turn it over to Camille for some thoughts too. We just appreciate everything that y'all do. And it's exciting to us. We, as a kind of a recovering politician, sort of washed up in the process, you're often reminded of the things you did wrong when you leave the process. But it's special to see something that we were at least a small piece of actually come together, and we appreciate everything y'all are doing.
And Andy likes to give me all the credit for these things, but he was obviously very instrumental, and always, as parents, we don't have to say, today we're going to think about Down syndrome, as soon as your feet hit the floor in the morning, or your eyes open up, that's our life and we live it. And so he was always really great in his political career about always, when things came up, thinking about how these opportunities that were for everybody, how we could kind of make them open really to everybody, not just to the everybody that people think of, but here's our world of people with unique abilities over here. And the staff he had when he was Senate president, they were also phenomenal and really were so supportive about helping to pass policy and make suggestions. And I think they really enjoyed being able to work on things in their political career that was directly supporting people, and not just not just roads and some of those other things that you get caught up in when you're doing politics. So let's talk about, we're all here today to either learn how we can implement a successful post-secondary program, or how we can make an existing program even better. So why are these programs even important? I want you to think for a moment about when your son or daughter was born. And if you don't have children, think about a niece or a nephew or a close friend's child being born. At that moment, there's so much excitement and hope for this precious baby's new future. Then imagine a doctor coming in and running down a list of things that he or she believes that your child will never do. This list may include things like read, write, drive a car, go to college, etc. That is what it is often like to have a child with unique abilities, especially for our son and other people with Down syndrome because of their physical features of Down syndrome. When Andrew walks into a room and people meet him for the first time, they're usually thinking about all the things that he can't do, or that they at least think and perceive that he can't do. People with Down syndrome are accomplishing things that in the past that didn't seem attainable. In addition to attending college, they are also getting their driver's license, which our son did in January. They are working, living independently, getting married, and just last week, a young man with Down syndrome who lives right here in Maitland completed the Florida Ironman. When I first started speaking today, I spoke about the opportunities that you're providing being life-changing. And when I said that, I meant that they're not only life-changing to the student, but to their entire family. What you're doing is giving parents the opportunity to do something that parents are supposed to do with their young adults, but our parents have not always had this opportunity. If you told parents 10 or 15 years ago that going to college would be a realistic opportunity for their son or daughter with unique abilities, they would have laughed. Now, thanks to all of you and to the leaders of the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities, the Florida Legislature for providing ongoing funding, and organizations like Think College, we have over 20 post-secondary opportunities here in Florida, the second highest amount in the United States. I often hear families talk about their typical sons and daughters' experience with college. They talk about how they weren't sure they were mature enough and if they were ready to start making their own decisions. They go on to share with me how when their son or daughter came home around the holidays, they couldn't believe the amount of personal growth they had made. This is the same for people with unique abilities. Post-secondary options provide opportunities for our loved ones to have the opportunity to learn, grow, mature, and to become independent. Research shows that students with unique abilities who attend a post-secondary program have a higher chance of finding employment and of living independently. Two things we all want in life: a job and independence. Our son Andrew turned 17 in September. It's amazing the different thoughts that 17 brings. Thoughts about what's next. How do we get from where we are today to living independently and having a job? I keep telling him we need to figure out the skills to pay the bills. To be honest, it's something that weighs heavily on my mind. Andrew is very independent and very capable, but he still has Down syndrome and doesn't have the same opportunities as you and I. That's why what you're doing is so important. I hope Andrew will want to try attending one of our state colleges, but if that doesn't work, I know he would love to have the college experience, and I know that it would be an amazing opportunity for him that would provide growth and lots of other things that would help him to go on and be more independent and to live his best life. We will continue to push Andrew to be the best he can and to not settle for easy. We will continue to educate parents to have high expectations for their children, and we will continue to try and educate the community and help others to recognize that all people have worth and potential. And we're so grateful that you guys are here this week and participating in the Planning Institute. And we just want to thank you for all that you do. And I don't know if you have any closing remarks.
No, it just like I said, it's really, really special. And we're happy to answer any questions too. But even as I mentioned at the beginning, the term unique abilities, that was something that just came out of a conversation. You know, Camille often will say that it will correct people, you know, your Down syndrome son, and he's son first that just happens to have Down syndrome. And I can remember being in a meeting one time and somebody said, you know, your son has a disability, blah, blah, blah. I said, no, my son doesn't have a disability, he has a unique ability. And to see it really, hopefully, you know, I've had the opportunity to still keep in mind or touch base with the former colleagues and you know, to hear then Governor Scott use the term unique abilities and Governor DeSantis now using the term unique abilities. You know, vocabulary is important, and it's important how we talk about each other and to see that, you know, we have this idea of unique abilities, but y'all's job is to find those unique abilities and bring them out. Every program may be different. Every idea may be a little bit different, but as a parent, if we had the ability to look at 20 different programs and decide what's in the best interest for Andrew and what he will enjoy and learn and have a job, when he's done, and career sourcing, whatever it may be, that's the vision. And y'all are just implementing the vision. So thank you. And Janice, I know you gave us an hour. Camille and I don't talk an hour together. So we're happy to answer any questions. If not, so just thank you, everybody.
Oh my goodness, thank you. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. And thank you for your visions. I was listening to Kamala Harris the other day, and she had a few words in her speech that really hit me. And I was talking to one of my colleagues this morning and saying, I need to figure out how to fit this in, and you help me. I'm gonna say it. It's a small part, but and I'm gonna paraphrase it a little bit. In her speech, she talked about the strength of their vision to see what can be unburdened by what has been. And it gives me chills. And I'm just so thankful for you and your visions and the work that you all have done throughout our state and working with the legislation. We are a partner. The center is a partner, and our teams are awesome. Our programs across the state, we are very proud of them. So thank you for letting me find a place to put those words. And, we'll open it up for questions.
If you'd like to ask a question, simply unmute yourself by going to the left-hand bottom corner of your screen, and you'll see the microphone there to unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Gwen Williams, and I have a comment. It's not really a question. I just want to say thank you for all of your hard work and your commitment to students who have unique abilities. And I also want to say that I can hardly wait until we take this worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Janice, maybe I could, well, we got a couple minutes, and that comment sort of tweaked a thought. So one of the things that we were involved in was the Gardiner Scholarship, and we did not ask that to be named after us. The legislature decided to do it reluctantly. We kind of had to go along with it. But I think this year there's 170 million, give or take, and over 11,000 students that have essentially an educational scholarship that allow them to, early on I talked about early intervention services, speech and occupational. It allows for that parent to say, we want to use the scholarship, and every year there's a waiting list, and it also allows them to use it for some post-secondary options as well. So that is it. I mentioned that because talking about going worldwide, now other states are following that model for a scholarship, and that was something we heard from parents. We were blessed that we were going to make adjustments so that Andrew had whatever he needed. But you have a lot of families that don't have that flexibility, and the scholarship, actually, it's on average about $10,000 a year. It gives that family that option. Maybe they would want to put it more into therapies or speech therapy or different things like that. And it ultimately passed the legislature unanimously, but it continues to grow, and other states are using that model because it fits right into what y'all are doing as well.
In addition to that, when we present nationally, other states are asking, how did you all get this into the legislature? How did you get the state to support this? There are programs across the state, across the country, but they're trying to figure out how to do the same thing that we are doing. So we certainly are to my knowledge, the only state in the country that is doing this and have this level of support from the state. So we have a lot to
timing is everything. And
timing.
we were blessed to be maybe somewhere at the right time to get it done. And hopefully other states will see the benefit of what y'all are doing and the number of kids, students you're impacting. It's really, really awesome for us to see.
Good morning. This is Kathy Becht. If I could ask a question as well. Hi, both of you. It's good to see you. When I look at institutions across the country and here in Florida as well, and we see the difficulty in sustainability of these programs. So there's, of course, federal legislation, then we have our state legislation that provides grants to get programs started. It is the sustainability that we're running into as issues. And that really gets down to the individual institution and the commitment that institution has. Because let's face it, it's a small community of students that we are supporting. And it's a community that takes more intensive support to succeed in college. And so that's really a struggle. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions for us in that sustainability piece? And I'll get off and let you talk.
Yeah, a couple thoughts. I think what has sustained what we've done is that there's recurring revenue in the state budget. It's embedded in the state budget. I think somebody would have to really go out of their way to go in and pull it out. But it's also the commitment. You know, I mentioned UNF, University of North Florida. They had a program long before I came along and started talking about taking it statewide. And they had a president, John Delaney, who was a huge advocate. I mean, John was like, no, we're gonna do this. It's the right thing to do. They also had the Arc of Jacksonville, which was not far from the campus. So the sustainability is the commitment from the schools, but it's also the commitment of the organizations around that school, making sure they're putting some pressure on them. But I will say that there has been some discussion, and we haven't made a move on this yet. You know, there was some discussion as to, okay, now as these programs, how do we move from that initial grant to a little bit more sustainable funding that are really getting the core programs in place, so that you know, obviously we're going into a very unusual time in the state budget process. But there has been some of that, Doctor said, some of that discussion has been, okay, what can we do? You know, because we have a real good foundation, but so much of it is just a commitment from the schools to do it and the parents. And then we are open to looking at tweaking some of the language to have some more sustainability financially for the programs too.
Hi, my name is Dr. Jenny Root. I'm an assistant professor at Florida State University. And I'd like to know what would you say to K-12 teachers and school systems regarding how to prepare students for these increasing opportunities? You know, it really resonated me when you said these are sort of the fruits of early intervention, and they're going to spoil if we've prepared them, if we're not ready on the other end. And so what would you say to those stakeholders?
Take a shot.
I think that was one of the exciting things about making these opportunities, these post-secondary opportunities available, is the trickle-down effect, right? So if you have, and keep in mind that my experience and perspective is kids with Down syndrome, who the world often looks at as, when they say, oh yeah, we do, we LS for everybody, but not the kids with the most significant disabilities, which is, I learned early that they were talking about people with Down syndrome, which I don't see them as the most significant, but that, when you're thinking about IEP and you're in the IEP process and you're just thinking, oh, I just have to get this kid through 12th grade and, he's going to go back home and do whatever. And then parents now are like, no, I want my kid to go to college. That's my goal on my IEP. I think it's, the teachers now are saying, oh, wow, we got to make sure that this kid's ready to go onto a post-secondary program. So I think through the Down Syndrome Foundation of Florida, we have a program called Down Syndrome Partners in Education, and we work with like 7 counties here in Central Florida, and we meet with them 3 times a year and just get them together to share ideas. We try and provide training opportunities for their teachers. But I think it's fantastic, and I love that when they're sitting down working on IEPs, that they know, okay, this is the goal, this is where. And you know, when the program at UCF started, I was part of that initial group that helped to set up the parameters. And I know there's several people on this call that were part of it, Chris Webb, Adam Meyer. But it was, we thought, oh my gosh, we're going to get so many applications because this is so exciting. And there were not as many as we expected, because really parents whose kids were the age to go and participate, they never had this dream for their kids. And all of a sudden the thought of sending their kid to UCF to live on campus was like, oh, there's no way, you know? But if you talk to these younger families who now, for the whole life of their child, these opportunities have existed, that's what they think. Yes, my child's gonna graduate from high school and go on to college, because it's always been available to them. And so I think every year you have that more of that expectation from parents because it's existed.
Right.
So yes, our K through 12 schools, I think it's a great message. This is the expectation, right? Kind of like as parents, this is our expectation, and we need you to partner with us and have these students ready for this opportunity.
Yeah, and I would, one year we changed the continuing education for public schools for teachers to learn more about educating an individual with unique ability. I mentioned the Gardiner scholarship. There's a waiting list, all these kids on the and families that want it. There was no advertising at all for that. It was word of mouth. It was a pediatrician saying to a parent, have you heard about this scholarship, or whatever it may be. And I mentioned that as a story because, as Camille mentioned, the younger parents especially have become much more savvy as advocates for their child. Maybe they're checking out the website of what options there are for them. Maybe they heard about the scholarship. Maybe they heard about the program at UCF or, wherever it may be. And they're going into that IEP with a whole different view of the world than they did before.
And Andy brought up a good point about the change in the continuing education requirements, because we provide some of that education through the foundation. So we'll have presenters come and where teachers can get their points. And well, I'd like to think they're just coming because they really want to know about it. And I'm okay with that. I know that they're coming because they need, I'm a CPI, I have to have my continuing education also. So we look for those opportunities. And so part of their points have to be in an area that is specifically about students with unique abilities. And so it's fantastic, especially for some of the older teachers who didn't maybe have that training in school because that was not what they were going to be doing. I think it's been great that they have to have that exposure to what that looks like and how to do it through their continuing education.
When we, and Camille kind of alluded to this, so when we eliminated the special diploma, like we knew that 9th grade class, we knew when they were going to graduate without a special diploma. And I think you've seen some uptick in some of these areas, but what, as Camille said, the young families that have a child now that's maybe in some early steps or early intervention programs, when they, in 10 years, 15 years, it's going to be even more. It's going to be, I think, really exciting to see where, and this is why y'all are just so important, because you're at the forefront. I mean, more and more opportunities are being given to people with unique abilities, and changing the IEP, doing away with special diploma. It's really, in continuing education, all this stuff. In many ways, I'd love to say we just sat down one day and wrote all this out, but it really was, maybe we were at that stage of life where we were talking to people about IEPs. Well, we ought to change it. Or special diploma. Well, we don't want special diploma. We ought to change. I mean, all those things just were, like I said, I keep saying it, we just were in the right place at the right time. But I think more and more schools are embracing this, and then the public schools are, and they kind of have to. So.
Another question.
Well, if there are no more questions.
Well, I do see one.
Oh.
So this is really gonna make you think about it. And actually it was posted over in Hoover. But we have a question. Camille and Senator Gardiner, are you available and willing to help other states develop the vision and legislative support to adapt and replicate what you are accomplishing in Ohio? This is from Margot Izzo, who's at Ohio State.
Oh, absolutely. We'd love to. You know, when I was in the process, I had an opportunity to speak at a couple of education foundations. Absolutely, yeah. No, I actually had an opportunity to go up to Georgia one time to speak to some of their legislators about some of the things we did. We'll talk to anybody, but I will tell you, whether it's at Ohio State, wherever it is, it's having somebody on the ground that is just passionate about doing it. And we can absolutely, we will talk to anybody, anytime, give advice. And what's great is whether it's Ohio or another state, through Camille's connections, there are so many different associations that we could reach out to help become advocates for it. Yeah, absolutely. You know, there are some universities around the country that do have some programs, but we would love to do that.
So it answers another one with Mississippi. Also asking me, scale it up to Mississippi, Gwen Williams asked.
Get a camper, get on the road.
We really would be, because I think that's, you know, any advocates are good advocates. I think, as I mentioned earlier, as a parent, we don't schedule time to be passionate about this. It's our life. And so we also know how other parents feel, right? You know, that's the great thing about, like, you know, when I meet a family, I'm talking with them, whether it's a new family that just had a diagnosis of, and it doesn't have to just be Down syndrome, right? Like, I can put myself in that position. I know what it felt like, you know, when I first found out, or how I feel when Andrew does something and people don't give him a chance, or he, you know, and someone calls me and says, my son was treated, you know, I can put myself in their shoes. And so any opportunity that we have to help other families or other communities open up opportunities for people with unique abilities, we would be more than happy to be part of that. And my contact information you can find on the Down Syndrome Foundation of Florida website, and Andy's contact information is on the Orlando Health website. So you are welcome to reach out to either of us, and we'd be happy to help.
Or through Janice, she knows how to get us.
Or Janice.
And I would also, one thing in talking about advocacy and different things like that, and this just comes from being in a legislature forever, is, you know, it's not just about coming in and saying, somebody got some flowers.
Oh.
You know, so many times people would come in to see a legislator and say, well, we need more money. And we all need more money for our program. You know, nobody ever comes in and says, my program is really bad. Can you take some money away? But what I've always tried to say, and I would say this to those that want to start this in other states, is really work on, okay, what needs to be changed, what statute needs to be changed, what budget line item needs to be changed that can truly have an impact on what you're trying to do. The most successful people that I dealt with were the ones that could come in, see you, and show you exactly, if you change this word, or if you tweak this, then it'll have an impact. That's the thing that I think sometimes gets lost in our political dialogue now, is the most effective people that are passionate and understand the process. And I think other states, you know, we would welcome that as well. So.
And one last question, Kathy Beck asked, who are our current champions in the legislature for disability advocacy?
You know, it's certainly, we were in a different, not that we were anything special, but we were living it in, you know, everybody that I served with knew it was a priority and pretty much knew they weren't leaving until we resolved some of those issues. But certainly Aaron Bean out of Jacksonville is a huge advocate. you know, Bill Galvana, who just left as Senate President, was a huge advocate. He's term limited out. I'd say Kelly Stargell, Lorianne Osley out of Tallahassee is a huge advocate.
What's her name just went?
Who?
Amy? The woman from the town.
Oh, Allison Tant. Yeah, Allison Tant out of Tallahassee as well. We worked with Allison a lot on starting some programs in Tallahassee. I mean, there are a bunch of advocates. I would think that what I would say is when you're working with these legislators is, as I said before, go in with a specific request. And I mentioned Allison Tant and Lorianne Osley, even Aaron Bean. Aaron Bean and I served together since 2000. They know the budget better than anybody, and that's where you really need to work on them. And you know, we will continue to, every year goes by, we are not as involved as we used to be, but we still advocate for issues and things that we care about. So we'll be, if they'll let us in the Capitol, I don't know with the COVID, but.
And I think also when Kathy asked earlier about, you know, how do you keep funding going and those kinds of things, I think it's education, right? So, you know, we were fortunate when we were up in the legislature. I mean, Andrew was born when Andy served in the House. So all of those members saw him, you know, growing up, right? From, you know, we were up there, Andy, we were fortunate that the kids and I got to be there in Tallahassee. We'd see them throughout the year in different parts of the state at different functions for families. And so, you know, even if they had never met a person with Down syndrome, which it's possible, right? They had that interaction to be able to see that he's a real person and, you know, I can communicate with him, just all those things like that just seems so normal. But that's true, you know, go meet with your legislators when you have the opportunity, take your children or, you know, bring families, your students that are participating in the programs, let them share with their legislators, you know, tell their story. That's right, because it's easy, you know, for you to go and say, oh, this is really important and this is why, and, you know, rattle off all these statistics. But when you have a student who's either in the program or did the program and could say, this is why it was beneficial to me. It just, that is so much more powerful. And so just really, it was nice when Andy was there, and people call me sometimes now and ask me about things. And I was like, oh, I wish I could just call him and say, hey, we need to fix this. It was definitely the easier route. Even for me now, I have to think, who can I call? Who can I get to, sponsor this bill, or who can we, but it's definitely keeping them educated and letting them know why the issue is important and why it's helping families in Florida and in their district specifically. Oh, a picture of Andrew. Do I have a picture of Andrew? Should we just get him?
Can you pull one up on there?
I don't know if I probably have one on my phone. I mean, he's here. I can just go get him for you. Here's a picture of him with his sister from just this weekend. My daughter got her point shoes and he happened to have to go with us.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. You know, what a beautiful segue, because right after you, we have graduates from our program who will tell the story about what the FPCTPs did for them. So, you know, making it real, it always makes a difference, you know. Well,
thank you for having us here today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we're excited that you guys are going to be learning and sharing ideas this week. And I know it's just going to help to make the program grow and even be better. And we're excited to hear what the students have to say also. And we're glad that we were before them, because that would be a hard act to follow.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm glad you're going to stay on and listen to our panel. Iris is going to introduce that panel, and we can't thank you enough. I'm going to put my applause up, and I hope the rest of you do too. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll keep working hard.